The Gingerbread Runner. A fresh audiobook-style adaptation. At the edge of a deep green forest, where the wind moved through the pine trees like a whispering choir, there stood a crooked little cottage with smoke curling from its chimney. Inside lived an elderly man and his wife. They did not own much. Their roof creaked in winter, their chairs wobbled, and the garden fence leaned as if it were always tired. But their home was warm, their table was shared, and most evenings they laughed together beside the fire. Still, there was one quiet sadness between them. They had never had a child. One bright morning, while sunlight spilled across the kitchen floor, the old woman tied on her apron and began mixing dough in a wooden bowl. Cinnamon, ginger, and sugar filled the room with a sweet, comforting smell. Her husband stepped in, leaning on the doorway. "What are you making today, my dear?" She smiled without looking up. "Something special. A little gingerbread boy." She rolled the dough carefully, cut out a tiny figure with arms and legs, and placed it gently on a baking tray. Into the oven he went. As the minutes passed, the whole cottage filled with the scent of warm spice and golden sugar. When the cookie was baked just right, the old woman pulled him out and set him on the counter to cool. Then came the decorating. 2 raisins for eyes. A tiny candy for a nose. Cream for his hair and little clothes. Red cherries down the front for buttons. The old woman stepped back and admired him. "Well now," she said softly, "aren't you a fine little fellow?" Then she frowned. "Wait, something is missing." She leaned closer. "Oh. Your mouth." With a careful hand, she drew a small smiling mouth with cream. "There," she said. "Now you're finished." At that very moment, the little gingerbread boy blinked. The old woman froze. Then the gingerbread boy sat up, stretched his cookie arms, and said, "Thank you kindly." The old woman gasped so loudly her husband nearly dropped his cup in the next room. You can talk?" The gingerbread boy sprang to his feet. "Talk? I can do better than that." And before she could stop him, he leapt from the counter to a chair, from the chair to the floor, and dashed straight toward the open kitchen door. "Come back," cried the old woman. But the gingerbread boy was already flying through the garden, his cherry buttons flashing in the sun. The old woman hurried after him, waving her apron. From the window, her husband called, "Where are you going in such a rush?" "My cookie has escaped," she shouted. The old man stared. Then, after one stunned second, he grabbed his hat and stumbled out after them. But the gingerbread boy was quick. Faster than quick. His little feet barely touched the ground. He called over his shoulder, bright with laughter, "Chase if you like. I'm spice and sugar on the wind." Across the garden he ran, past the well, through a gap in the fence, and into the open countryside. Soon he came to a pasture, where a cow was grazing lazily beneath a patch of shade. The cow lifted her head and sniffed the air. "Well, now," she mooed, licking her lips. "That smells like dessert." She lowered her horns and trotted after him. "Hold still, little biscuit." The gingerbread boy laughed. "You'll need quicker hooves than that." Behind him came the old woman, the old man, and now the cow, all chasing in a strange and breathless parade. A little farther on, a pig rooting near a muddy pen noticed the sweet-smelling runner. "A walking cookie," the pig snorted. "Today is my lucky day." And off he charged, splashing mud in every direction. The gingerbread boy looked back and grinned. "First a woman, then a man, then a cow, now a pig? You may all follow, but you won't catch me." The chase thundered onward. Soon a chicken scratching for grain in the road spotted him. Her eyes widened. "That looks better than corn." She flapped her wings and joined the chase, clucking fiercely. The gingerbread boy ran on, delighted with himself. The old couple puffed and panted. The cow lumbered. The pig squealed. The chicken flapped and squawked. But none of them could close the distance. The gingerbread boy's pride grew with every step. I must be the fastest baked thing in the world, he said to himself. No one can touch me. Then the land dipped sharply. Ahead, glittering beneath the afternoon sun, rushed a wide river. The gingerbread boy skidded to a stop at the bank. Water. His smile vanished. He knew very well what happened to gingerbread in water. Behind him, the crowd was catching up. The old woman called, "There he is." The cow mooed. The pig snorted. The chicken clucked. The old man wheezed. The gingerbread boy searched left and right, but there was no bridge, no stepping stones, no fallen tree. Then a smooth voice came from the shadows. Trouble crossing? A fox stepped out from behind a willow tree. His red coat shone like firelight, and his eyes were bright and clever. The gingerbread boy narrowed his raisin eyes. I suppose you want to eat me too. The fox placed one paw over his chest as though wounded. Eat you? My dear little traveler, I am a gentleman. I simply enjoy helping those in need. The gingerbread boy glanced back. The crowd was getting closer. The fox lowered his tail into the grass. Climb on. I'll carry you across before they reach us. The gingerbread boy hesitated. But the river roared, and his pursuers were nearly upon him. So he jumped onto the fox's tail and held tight. The fox slipped into the river and began to swim. At the bank, the old woman, the old man, the cow, the pig, and the chicken arrived too late. They watched helplessly as the fox carried the gingerbread boy away. At first, the gingerbread boy felt triumphant. But then the river grew deeper. Cold water lapped near the fox's tail. Higher, cried the gingerbread boy. I'm getting splashed. Of course, said the fox. Move on to my back. The gingerbread boy climbed up. They swam farther. The current pulled harder. My back is sinking, said the fox. Best climb onto my head. The gingerbread boy scrambled to the fox's head. The opposite shore was close now. The fox's voice became softer. Almost there. But the water is rising again. Step onto my nose. That's the safest place. The gingerbread boy, thinking only of staying dry, crept onto the fox's narrow nose. The fox smiled. And just as they reached the riverbank, he flicked his snout upward. The gingerbread boy flew into the air. The fox opened his jaws wide. But before the gingerbread boy could fall, a black shape swept down from the sky. A crow snatched him neatly in its beak and flapped away over the river. The fox snapped at empty air. For the first time all day, the gingerbread boy was speechless. The crow soared above the trees, carrying him farther and farther from danger. After a moment, the gingerbread boy whispered, "Excuse me, do crows like gingerbread?" The crow, proud of itself, opened its beak to answer. Very moo. That was all it managed. The gingerbread boy dropped. Down he fell, spinning through leaves, bouncing off a soft patch of moss, and landing on his feet. Then he ran. He ran past bushes, past rocks, past the edge of the forest, his laughter trailing behind him like a bell. Foxes, crows, cows, pigs, chickens, and people may try, he called, but I'm still ahead of them all. And from that day on, if anyone glimpsed a small gingerbread figure racing along a country road, they knew better than to chase him. Because some cookies are made for eating. But that one was made for running. Pinocchio, the Wooden Boy. A fresh audiobook-style adaptation. In a quiet town of stone streets and warm lamplight, there lived an old toy maker named Geppetto. His shop was small, but to the children of the town, it felt like a place of wonder. Wooden horses lined the shelves. Painted soldiers stood in rows. Tiny boats hung from strings, and music boxes chimed when the door opened. Geppetto made toys with patient hands and a kind heart. But when evening came, and the children went home with their parents, the little shop grew silent. That silence always made Geppetto feel his loneliness. He had no wife. No children. No family waiting at the table. Many nights, he would sit by the window and watch the stars appear above the rooftops. If only I had a son, he would whisper. Someone to teach. Someone to love. One morning, Geppetto walked into the woods to search for wood for his next project. The air smelled of leaves and damp earth. Birds called from the branches overhead. Then he saw it. A smooth log, pale and strong, lying beneath an old tree. Geppetto ran his hand across it. "This will do beautifully," he said. He carried the log back to his workshop and placed it on his carving table. Then he took up his tools. Tap. Scrape. Shave. The curls of wood fell like golden ribbons. But as Geppetto worked, a tiny voice spoke from somewhere nearby. "Hello?" Geppetto stopped. He turned around. No one was there. He frowned and shook his head. "Too many hours alone," he muttered. He began carving again. "Hello," said the voice once more. This time, Geppetto nearly dropped his chisel. "Who's there?" The workshop was empty except for the half-carved wood on his bench. Geppetto stared at the log. Then, very slowly, he continued his work. He carved a round head, a small body, arms with little hands, legs, and feet. He shaped the face carefully, giving the puppet curious eyes and a cheerful mouth. By sunset, the puppet was finished. Geppetto set him in a chair. "There," he said, tired but pleased. "A fine little puppet." He turned to sweep the floor. Behind him, the chair creaked. Geppetto looked back. The puppet blinked. Then it hopped down and began dancing across the floor, clacking its wooden feet and laughing like a child. Geppetto's mouth fell open. The puppet spun in a circle. "Look at me," he cried. "I can move." Geppetto pressed a hand to his heart. "My stars." The little puppet ran to him, arms outstretched. Something inside the old man melted. He lifted the puppet gently. "You are no ordinary toy," Geppetto whispered. "You shall be my boy." He thought for a moment. "Your name will be Pinocchio." From that day on, the workshop was no longer quiet. Pinocchio asked questions from morning until night. He danced on tables, hid in cupboards, laughed at sawdust, and tried to understand the world beyond the shop windows. Geppetto was happier than he had been in years. He taught Pinocchio how to speak politely, how to hold a spoon, how to listen, and how to be kind. When summer ended, Geppetto said, "Now it is time for you to go to school." Pinocchio clapped his wooden hands. "School? Will there be books?" "Yes," said Geppetto. "And lessons. And other children." But books cost money, and Geppetto had very little. So he sold his warm coat, the one he wore through every winter, and used the money to send Pinocchio to buy schoolbooks. "Go straight to the bookshop," Geppetto said, placing the coins in Pinocchio's hand. "Then straight to school." "I will, father," Pinocchio promised. He set off proudly through town. The streets were alive with noise. Vendors shouted. Horses clattered over the stones. Bakers opened their doors, filling the air with the smell of bread. Pinocchio turned his head at every sound. Then he heard music. At the edge of the square stood a bright circus tent, striped red and gold. A crowd had gathered outside while a loud clown waved his arms. Step inside. Wonders. Laughter. Marvels you'll never forget. Pinocchio's eyes shone. He edged closer. The clown blocked his path. "Ticket first." Pinocchio remembered the coins in his pocket. "They're for books," he whispered. But the music swelled. The crowd cheered. The tent glowed like a dream. Slowly, Pinocchio handed over the money. Inside, he saw puppets dancing on a stage. They moved by strings, jerked by hidden hands above. Pinocchio was amazed. "Friends," he cried. "I am like you." He climbed onto the stage and began dancing among them. The audience laughed, thinking it was part of the show. But high above, the puppet master stared with greedy eyes. "A wooden puppet with no strings," he murmured. "That could make me rich." When the show ended, he seized Pinocchio and locked him in a cage. The tent grew dark. Pinocchio sat alone behind the bars, frightened and ashamed. "I should have listened to father," he said. A soft blue light appeared beside him. A gentle fairy stood there, shining like moonlight. "Pinocchio," she said, "you were given a chance to do right, and you wandered away from it." Pinocchio lowered his head. "I know. I'm sorry." The fairy's face softened. "Because you understand your mistake, I will help you." With a wave of her wand, the cage opened. Then she placed new coins in his hand. "Go to school. Do not be led away again." "I won't," Pinocchio promised. The fairy guided him out of the circus and vanished into the morning air. Pinocchio hurried down the road, determined to do better. But before he reached the bookshop, two figures stepped from an alley. One was a fox in a fine but ragged coat. The other was a cat with a sly smile and a walking stick. "Good day, young gentleman," said the fox. "Where are you off to in such a hurry?" "To buy schoolbooks," said Pinocchio. The cat's eyes flicked to the money. "Books," said the fox. "A noble idea. But what if you could have more than books?" Pinocchio tilted his head. "More?" The fox leaned closer. "There is a secret field outside town. Plant one coin there, and by morning a tree will grow with coins on every branch." Pinocchio's eyes widened. "A money tree?" "The finest kind," said the cat. Pinocchio was young, trusting, and eager to surprise Geppetto. So he gave them the money. The fox and cat grabbed it and disappeared faster than smoke. Pinocchio waited. No tree appeared. No coins grew. Only the wind moved through the grass. Then the blue fairy appeared again. "Pinocchio," she said, "where are your schoolbooks?" Pinocchio shuffled his wooden feet. "I bought them." The fairy looked at him quietly. "Did you?" "Yes," he said quickly. 4 books. Very large ones. I left them at school." The moment the lie left his mouth, his nose stretched forward. Pinocchio gasped. The fairy raised an eyebrow. "Would you like to try again?" "I'm telling the truth." Pinocchio cried. His nose grew longer. "So many books," he added nervously. "A mountain of books." His nose stretched farther still, until it was so long he could barely turn his head. Pinocchio began to cry. "I lied," he said. "The fox and the cat tricked me, and I gave them the money." At once, the fairy touched his nose with her wand, and it returned to its proper size. "Truth may be hard," she said, "but lies only make the burden heavier." Pinocchio nodded. "I understand." The fairy gave him coins one last time. "Use them wisely." Pinocchio held them tightly and hurried back toward town. But misfortune had not finished with him. Near the harbor, the puppet master from the circus spotted him. "There you are," he growled. Before Pinocchio could run, the puppet master grabbed him and hurled him into the sea. Pinocchio hit the water with a splash. For one terrifying second, he thought he would sink. But he did not. He floated. His wooden body bobbed on the waves. "I can float," he cried. Soon fear turned to delight. He paddled and splashed, laughing beneath the open sky. But the sea was wide, and Pinocchio swam too far. Suddenly, the water lifted beneath him. A huge shadow rose from the deep. Then came a mouth, vast, dark, and terrible. With one great gulp, a giant fish swallowed him whole. Pinocchio tumbled into darkness. When he landed, the air smelled of salt and seaweed. Strange objects lay around him, broken boards, old nets, bits of rope. He was inside the belly of the fish. "Father," he cried, but only his echo answered. Meanwhile, back in town, Geppetto had grown desperate. Pinocchio had not returned. The old man searched the streets, the market, the circus, and finally the shore. "Have you seen my son?" he asked the fisherman. "He is small, made of wood, and very dear to me." One fisherman remembered seeing a wooden boy in the water. Geppetto's face went pale. The fisherman, who knew his kind heart, gave him a small boat. Geppetto rowed into the sea. But clouds gathered. Rain began to fall. The waves rose higher and higher until the little boat cracked beneath them. Geppetto was thrown into the water. He struggled, calling Pinocchio's name. Then the same giant fish rose from the depths and swallowed him too. Down he slid into the darkness. Inside the fish, Pinocchio heard a familiar voice. "Pinocchio." "Father?" They rushed into each other's arms. Pinocchio held him tightly. "I'm sorry," he cried. "I disobeyed you. I wasted the money. I lied. I never meant to hurt you." Geppetto hugged him close. "My son, I only wanted you safe." The blue fairy heard Pinocchio's honest sorrow. A glow filled the fish's belly. She appeared before them and lifted her wand. A great shimmering bubble formed around Geppetto and Pinocchio, carrying them up, out of the giant fish, through the waves, and safely back to shore. After that day, Pinocchio changed. He went to school. He came home when he was told. He helped Geppetto in the workshop. And when he made mistakes, he told the truth. The fairy watched from afar and saw that the wooden boy's heart had grown brave and kind. One quiet night, while Pinocchio slept, she came to his bedside. Moonlight poured through the window. The fairy touched him gently with her wand. By morning, everything was different. Pinocchio opened his eyes and sat up. His hands were no longer wooden. His arms were warm. His feet were real. He leapt from bed and ran to the workshop. "Father! Father, look!" Geppetto turned. There stood Pinocchio, not a puppet, not carved wood, but a living boy. Geppetto's eyes filled with tears. "My son," he whispered. Pinocchio ran into his arms. And in that little workshop, where loneliness had once lived, there was now laughter, love, and the sound of a real child's footsteps. From then on, Pinocchio remembered what he had learned. A brave heart tells the truth. And a child who chooses goodness becomes real in every way that matters.